welcome to God's 5 Minutes with Pastor Ed Wilson. Reach him at gods5minutes@gmail.com. Now, here's Ed Wilson with God's 5 Minutes.
Hello, friends. Genesis 26 tells us the story of Isaac's life, and particularly of how his enemies, the envious Philistines, made trouble for him by stopping up his wells. The salient feature of Isaac's life is that it has no salient features. He lived out his 180 years in quiet with little to make history. He seems never to have wandered far from around Beersheba. Those quiet, rolling stretches of thinly populated land contented him, gave pasture for his flocks, fields for his cultivation. His father's life had been like a midsummer day with bursts of splendor and heavy thunderclouds. His was more like a calm day in autumn, windless and unchanging from morning till serene evening. The world thinks little of such lives, but they are fruitful. The land where Isaac lived is still marvelously fertile, even to rude farming. But to be merely a successful farmer and sheep owner might have seemed poor work to the heir of such glowing promises as Isaac had, for the expectations of a high destiny often makes one who has them disgusted with lowly duties. But the Scriptures said, if we hope for that which we see not, then do we with patience wait for it. And the best way to make ourselves fit for great things in the noble future is to bend our backs and wills to humble toil in the present. The Philistines' envy was understandable. Isaac was an alien, an intruder. Their stopping of the wells was a common act of hostility, and an effectual one in that land where water is everything. A more belligerent man might have been provoked to stay and defy the Philistines. Thou art much mightier than we, he and his had been told, and so he could have said, try to put me out then, and the result would have been that the Philistines would have been the ones to go. But the same spirit was in the man as it had been in the lad, when he let his father bind him and lay him on the altar without a struggle or a word, and he quietly went, leaving his fields and pastures. Very poor-spirited, says the world. What does Christ say? Isaac was not original. He cleaned out the wells which his father had dug, and gave them again the old names which his father had called them. Some people today, calling themselves advanced and liberal thinkers, regard our fathers' wells as much too choked with rubbish to be worth cleaning out, and the last thing they would dream of would be to revive the old names. On the other hand, the old wells were not enough for the new time, and so fresh ones were added. Isaac and his servants did not say, we will have no water but what is drawn from Abraham's wells. What was enough for him is enough for us. So, like all wise men, they were conservative, progressive, and progressively conservative. The other Shepters named in the history were sharp lawyers. They took strong ground in saying the water is ours. You have dug wells, but we are ground owners, and what is below the surface, as well as that which is on it, is our property. Again Isaac yielded, moved on a little way, and tried again. The second well was claimed and given up, and all that Isaac did was name the two, contention and enmity, as a gentle rebuke and memorial. Then, as often happens, gentleness wearied violence, and the Philistines got tired of annoying before Isaac got tired of yielding. So he came into a quiet area at last and traced his repose to God, naming his last well Broad Places, because the Lord had made room for him. Such a quiet spirit, strong in non-resistance and ready to yield rather than quarrel, might seem strangely out of place in those wild days and lands. He obeyed the Sermon on the Mount millenniums before it was spoken. Whether from temperament or from faith, he is the first instance of the Christian type of excellence in the Old Testament. For there ought to be no question that the spirit of meekness, which will not meet violence by violence, is the Christian spirit. Christian morals alter the perspective of moral values held by carnal men and exalt meekness above the heroic virtues admired by the world. The violets and lilies in Christ's garden are more beautiful than paintings of clashing swords and bloody shields. Have you talked to God today?
You have been listening to God's 5 Minutes with Pastor Ed Wilson. Reach him by email at godsfiveminutes@gmail.com. Tune in next time to hear more encouraging thoughts from God's Word on God's 5 Minutes with Pastor Ed Wilson.